Today you will see 5 currently best ranged builds to level up with in PvP on Ascension, a Loon server. With those builds, if you will be left to free cast from the backline, your foes will simply melt in a matter of seconds. Remember though, that those are just the damage profiles, and to be successful in PvP, you need to have as much CC, mobility and defensives to live through the times of being trained down. Thankfully, all of those specs leave some room to card utility stuff, so it shouldn't be that much of a problem. Let's get into the builds. So today I wanted to share a build with you that is synergizing warrior with ranged. This is all due to the lowest assault skill that basically uses slam modifiers but is ranged and cast while moving. Thanks to the fact that it synergizes very well with the slam, we can slap on it a lot of effects that will increase its damage tremendously and put on some random effects off of it that gives us even more damage from things like procs and all other cool stuff. The build may not have like the craziest burst in the game, but the damage is very consistent, and on top of that we can basically do everything while moving, which makes us very mobile with big range, nice damage with a passive AoE that we can proc basically constantly, and it's ranged, so it's great for team battles basically. If you got some people to cover you, then you will be raining chaos on the battlefields. Due to the fact that we are basically relying on one skill in this build, we want to power it up as much as possible, but also on top of that we have much more choice in utility area, because we don't really have to use any additional skill slots, as we are basically spamming simply one skill. And as you probably know, Ascension, PvP especially, really like one button skills, so it's pretty damn crazy. On top of everything, the playstyle is very spammy. If you find yourself like team fighting for like constant 5 minutes, you will leave the battlefield with such a finger pain. That's pretty crazy, to be honest. So like I said, we have quite a lot of choice when it comes down to utility, because we have a lot of space for it. Another second thing is that we also have quite a lot of choice in the talent trees, talent cards, oh my god. And this is mostly due to the fact that there are also quite a lot of options, and basically a lot of them come down to your playstyle. Lowest Assault is a skill that also make you play like a minigame constantly. If you play League of Legends, you probably know a character named Raven that basically make your auto attacks ricochet your weapon back onto the ground, and if you pick it up while in flight, you basically increase your damage or attack speed or whatever, I can't remember exactly, but you get the drill. So it's exactly the same in this case. Your weapon ricochets to the ground, but it stays there. So simply when you have a chance, you can pick it up to increase your movement speed and gain some extra rage. Like I said, the damage may not be over the top, but thanks to the crazy good mobility, we can constantly run around and spam the lowest assault, which makes it a very machine gun playstyle that is satisfying to pull off. And you're basically like a throwing barbarian fantasy, which is pretty damn cool. You can kite people forever if you get yourself correct tools to do so. One big issue is that basically, even though I name it like a leveling build, you basically unlock your full potential from like level 36. So it's kind of late for like a leveling PvP build, although the BGs in those higher levels tend to be less bursty and usually spend a lot more time on those, mainly because you need more XP to level up and stuff like that. So yeah, definitely up to level 30 you can level up in like 2 BGs if you're lucky with some aura of experience. But yeah, 40 to 60 do take a little bit longer time, but the build is so freaking fun to play that I would definitely recommend trying it out. So if you're willing to struggle a little bit to get to level 35 and then start pumping some crazy damage, you can see in this chart that on BG 40 to 50 I was able to top the kill charts and get to 100,000 damage in the whole BG. Of course, there was a lot of team fights going on, but you can see the craziness of it. Most of the damage comes from Stormguarder, which is also an AoE skill. That's why we get so much AoE going on. Windslam also is AoE, and we can improve it even more with some certain talents. So let's get into the build guide. So, for starters, I picked up Lightning Shield, Hamstring, Battle Stance and Battle Shout. It's going terrible until level 30, so if you do really want, I would pick up something like Sinister Strike instead of Battle Stance, for example. 10% armor penetration is pretty good, but for the sake of your mental health, I would recommend going for some spammable ability that you can use until level 30. So, as for the skill cards, we basically take 2 slots for damage, which is Law's Assault, like our main damaging ability that we'll be spamming constantly, and the second one being Weapon Enchant. I chose Wind Fury for this playthrough, and as you can see, it deals one hand deals almost 5%, offhand deals 2 and 5, which equals 7. Then we've got 1.5 from Zephyr, which is 8.5, and we take Wind Slam, which is basically AoE, that's why it does so much damage. So in total with buffs, Wind Fury equals like 20% of our DPS, which is quite good to be honest, but it needs those extra slots and talents to be able to achieve such numbers. You can go easy, pick up Fell Infused Weapon, it will work with Law's Assault perfectly, and then you don't have to worry about any extra talents, which you can use for different stuff. Then we've got 4 slots that basically goes for utility. I don't pick a charge for starter ability, so I go for Shimmer, which is shorter cooldown Blink, Disengage, which is only 30-second cooldown, Leaps Backwards, Hammer of Justice to have that juicy stun, and Divine Protection for a defensive cooldown. Things like, I don't know, Frost Nova, for example, would be perfect as well, as you could AoE freeze people to kite them around. But I would say that those are like additional things that can be useful and rolled randomly along the way. I would definitely pick those 2 for mobility, due to the fact that usually like 100% of the time melee people have a double charge in the toolkit, so you have to have those 2 to be able to run away from them. Ranged slow like Concussion Shot or Curse of the Swamp Witch would be great to improve our fighting, but this basic kit should be enough for you. As for the talents, the mandatory one are definitely Storm Guarder, which basically makes our slam, so Law's Assault constantly, deal extra damage to 4 nearby enemies when we have Lightning Shield active, and it actually refreshes its stacks, so we usually just turn on Lightning Shield before the fight, and then automatically just by spamming that Law's Assault it's going to get refreshed and deal extra damage. It has 2-second internal cooldown, so basically it means that approximately every second Law's Assault is going to proc it, so it gets it quite often. Overwhelming Rage is quite important as well, because Law's Assault costs 30 rage and we will be spamming it constantly, especially when we finally get improved slam ability, which decreases the swing timer of slam by 1 second. So Law's Assault is only half a second cast time, and also increases the damage of slam ability by 20%, so it's a green talent but a very important one. This allows us to spam that Law's Assault like a crazy machine gun, and that's why we need quite a lot of rage for it. Then Unending Fury further increases our slam damage. I picked Dreadnought, but that was a mistake. The thing is that Dreadnought spawns off of us, on contrary to Stormguard, which basically procs on target. So, in Mana Storms, this will be great because, yeah, usually we fight in melee anyway in Mana Storms, but yeah, in PvP we want to get out of range of those melees, and then Dreadnought is basically useless. Battering Ram is amazing. Casting Slam now ignores 10% armor and applies a stack of Sunder armor, so we've got a lot of armor ignoration and all those talents. So if you pick Wind Fury, definitely go for Wind Slam. This is some extra free damage when Wind Fury procs, and Zephyr increases the percentage off of which we proc Wind Fury, and on top of that gives us some extra damage. It doesn't deal that much, as I see from my damage breakdown, so I would probably go for something like Desolate Winds instead, because when it proc Wind Fury it applies a dot on the target, so that could be pretty good. But if you're going for Fell Infused Weapon, you basically free up 3 slots on the talent cards, because you don't take Wind Slam, you don't take Dreadnought, and you don't take Zephyr. So there's actually a way to play around this. but you have to pick up Glaive Toss in this ability card from the ability cards, because Law's Assault is also leaving like those special runes on the ground that when picked up, they also increase the damage of your next Glaive Toss by I think 10 or 20%, I'm not quite sure at the moment. Anyways, it stacks up to 5 times, so it can be pretty deadly, and there is actually 2 talents that you can take additionally. Battle Glaive, so using 3 warrior direct damaging abilities in a quick succession, resets the cooldown of your Glaive Toss and increases the damage of your next Glaive Toss by 35%. So it's an additional modifier on top of everything. Then you have improved Glaive Toss for additional 50% damage increase, and it also jumps to 2 additional targets, so it has extra usage in AoE and also slows targets for 3 seconds if used further than 15 yards, so additional cool stuff. And then you can pick Old Blood Surge, which basically makes your Glaive Toss proccing a buff that makes your next slam instant. They are pretty quick to cast, but this increases it even further, and consuming the Blood Surge buff increases our next Hunter or Warrior direct damaging abilities by 10%. Also, the Blood Surge ignores the armor by 50%, so after every Glaive Toss, our instant slam is going to be powered up by quite a significant amount, and I have to say that even without buffs, just by picking up that Gonk runes from the ground makes Glaive Toss hit for pretty nice amount. So as you can see, it crits for like 125 each. So with all those modifiers, it will probably crit for around like 250, maybe 300 even. So 2 Glaive Tosses is a 600 damage if it's a crit. So pretty damn good, especially that you can reset it thanks to the Battle Glaive after using 3 warrior direct damaging abilities. So it's pretty crazy. It's just making the playstyle a little bit more active thanks to the procs, and you can just simply create a rotation when you use 3 Law's Assault and then go for Glaive Toss and things like that. So definitely after the test, I would go the Glaive Toss route, but if you prefer to go for Fel Infused Weapon and you're not picking up those Glaive Toss things because you just want to spam one button, one ability, then I would definitely recommend getting some of those passive stuff like Amortizat Malediction, especially that it also slows the target and will be spamming attacks, so it can proc pretty damn often. We've got things like Seething Flames, which is a great one as well. Don't expect the damage from those passive things to be some kind of crazy increase, although every extra damage is welcome, especially if it goes off randomly. There's also a very good talent named Static Shock, which makes our lightning shield gain additional charges, and we have 50% chance to hit your target with a lightning shield orb when you deal damage with melee attack and abilities. This effect can only occur once every 2 seconds, so we're hitting with both weapons, so this adds additional layers of this proc chance. And lightning shield does pretty nice amount of damage, as you can see. One proc does like around 66, so it's even more extra damage on top of everything. I will quickly come back for the starters, because I was saying to take some kind of spammable ability. The other way you can do this is also go for a beast, for example, like a spider, and then you will have additional root from its web ability, which is 4-second root. Pretty amazing for PvP if you ask me, and you have some extra damage. I don't usually like pets, but I managed to roll an imp, which increases my stamina on top of everything. So with all the buffs, I have like on level 53 almost 4k health, which is pretty damn good. On top of that, I also roll like sprint and some heals along the way. I also got grappling hook, another mobility thing, so it can get pretty crazy. I did test sweeping strikes because I got it, and it seems to proc attacks to nearby enemies, so if you happen to get this or a blade flurry, definitely pick it up. And also I didn't card auto shot, but it's a very good extra damage, especially when you can free cast and stand still. Those extra shots will be welcome. This one is based off on Arcane Gunslinger, which basically combines Arcane Mage with a Hunter, allowing us to spam Arcane Missiles and Arcane Shots respectively. On Ascension, while powered up with some Moonfire Spam, we can actually proc the Missile Barrage, which allows us to shoot from very fast and very deadly arcane missiles, connected with some shooting thanks to one of our talents. This makes our arcane missiles very powerful and deal massive amounts of damage in short periods of time. To top it off, all of our Moonfire casts and Arcane Missiles cast also stuck a buff that increase our overall arcane shot damage, so we can achieve very nice burst windows while having 2 missile barrages stacked up. Then we fire them off one after the other and finish it up with a powerful arcane shot. It's a nice amount of damage in a very short period of time, which can actually execute people very efficiently. This build is also good for leveling because it is available from level 20 when we get the Missile Barrage talent. Then we can just basically start running around the BGs, spamming our Moonfires, shooting off powered up arcane shots, and releasing devastating arcane missiles on our enemies. I would say that it's not the best dueler spec, but the burst is pretty nice, and when it comes down to fighting melees, it's very good because we have a lot of room for the CC to be carded for this build, which allows us to have plenty of mobility and CC skills to actually get those melee of ourselves. And while doing so, we can also just continue to spam the Moonfires, which are pretty decent when it comes down to sustain damage, so we can wear people down pretty easily. And while having some windows of opportunity during CC, or just having more breathing room, we're allowed to getting off those arcane missiles combos that shred enemies to pieces very quickly. And with this method we can actually get some of those melees off guard. The spec truly shines when it comes down to the team fights, because while being in that back line you can just apply as many Moonfires as possible to the whole team and just simply release those missile barrages at them every time you get a proc. We don't really have any AoE potential in this one, but we can definitely shut down like individuals from the other team very easily. Needless to say, the Arcane Barrage and Arcane Missiles playstyle is very satisfying, at least to me. It's just something really cool while you release that button and that missile barrage is going off in a very quick succession. Lots of numbers showing up, very good, especially if you manage to get a lot of crit talents. Then you will see some very big numbers and enemy HPs just disappearing in a matter of seconds. So to start this build off, I go with agility. Although I haven't tested the intellect, it could be pretty good because our arcane missiles would actually benefit more from spell power. Either way, like I said, I haven't tested it. I went for agility and it's still pretty good. So if you're unsure, just pick agility. If you want to test out things, try with intellect. Spell power actually works also with melee and ranged attacks as well, so it probably wouldn't hurt you that much. But yeah, for the moment, I just picked agility. We start off with Arcane Intellect, Arcane Shot, Arcane Missiles, and Ord Shot. If you really want, you can swap Arcane Intellect with the standard Moonfire on level 1. But to be honest, Lunar Aspiration is superior in basically everything, so I just rolled Moonfire by accident along the way, so that's why I use it. If you don't have it, it's no big deal. And Arcane Intellect is an amazing buff to have always, so that's why I took it. For the skill cards, you want to go with Lunar Aspiration, which is our bread and butter for this build. We're going to be spamming it like crazy. Flame Tongue Weapon, as we're using dual wield weapons with agility, and we slap Flame Tongue on both of them to increase our spell power coefficient. And those are basically the only two spells that you need for the build. You already have Arcane Shot, we already have Arcane Missiles that we will be spamming with it, so I took Arcane Bullets and Aim Shot because I was testing things out. Those are totally unnecessary spells that you don't want to use. I also have taken Ice Age to have that route for the melees and Blink to have some mobility. You can very easily take a Hammer of Justice Stun in place of Aim Shots, and for example some Fear, which would allow you to create even more distance between the melee. And as we all know, melee can be very deadly, like a cat jumping on you needs only like 3 or 4 globals until you're dead. So sometimes the reaction time has to be really quick, and having all of those CCs can help you survive a little bit longer. Oh, maybe I didn't mention it before, but yeah, Lunar Aspiration is basically a improved version of Moonfire that uses energy instead of mana, and it also deals more damage overall, so that's why it's so important to have it. As for the talents, we definitely want to take Mental Quickness to have that extra spell power. You don't need it if you go for the Intellect stat, but with Agi, it's very important. Arc, Aim, and Shot. This actually makes every arcane spell we cast increase damage of our next arcane shot. It's only 5% against players, but it stacks up very quickly and nicely, so yeah, extra damage is always welcome. Missile Barrage is actually like our most important talent of all of those, because this makes our Moonfire having a 20% chance to proc the Missile Barrage, which makes our arcane missiles shoot faster and to be more powerful. This talent mixed with Shot Weaving actually makes it even more powerful, because casting arcane missiles while Missile Barrage is active weaves shots and spell together, firing a ranged shot with each arcane missile dealing 400 physical damage. While your primary stat is Agility, Missile Barrage is hastened by 40%. So, okay, I didn't actually see that second part of this talent, so this means that, yeah, going Agi is the way. This will basically like double the damage of our arcane missiles during the proc. So the basic game loop is you want to shoot off Arcane Shot because it's still pretty powerful, but yeah, most of the time when it's buffed by the Arc, Aim, and Shot. And then you just fish for Missile Barrage proc with your Moonfires. If you have both, try to apply both to increase that dot damage. If not, just spam that Lunar Aspiration until you have a proc, then shoot it off. The good thing is that they actually stack up to 2 times, so sometimes even if you like forget or get into some madness of spamming the Moonfires, you don't really have to worry about it. You can stack it to 2 times and then just shoot off 2 barrages one after another. The damage is pretty deadly, as you've seen, so very, very nice. On top of that, you definitely want to take Improved Arcane Shot to increase its damage. It's pretty spammable ability, so very nice. And Improved Moonfire. Arcane Reloading, that was for the aim shots, and Lunar Spirits has been a little bit changed because it allowed you to apply dot to a main target. Now it only damages the nearby targets, so those talents are useless. You can very easily go for some random proc like Seething Flames or Thunder Fury or Lightning Strike. I cannot exactly remember the name of it now. Or just something that buffs Moonfire even more. Arcane Empowerment is a very great talent because the coefficient of arcane missiles is increased by 30%. And on top of that, you get flat 3% damage boost. And I would, for example, go for Seething Flames for the second slot. As for talents for the leveling, you definitely want everything that increases your ranged weapon damage, or mage arcane spells overall. Damage increases like Malediction is a still great talent because it increases all damage done by 2%. And this is quite important. For spells of course, any extra CC or mobility is always welcome. The more you have it, the more deadly you will actually be. Crit chance. I actually also rolled Wacky Wizardry, so my offensive mage spells cast have 25% chance to cast additional random mage spell for free. So sometimes I get some things like Frozen Orb and stuff like that, so crazy shit can happen while spamming those arcane missiles. Finally, something for the Frost Mage lovers. The basic premise is very similar to Retail, although some of the spells are so buffed up that we turn out to be an amazing damage turret that can break down enemies in seconds when stars aligns and we get all the procs needed. As you probably know, I'm a proc lover spec, so this one is perfect. We basically can proc 3 instant cast spells just by casting things like Frostbolt, Frostnova, Cone of Cold. We always want those spells flying and hitting so we can get even more procs. Mostly we'll be running around and spamming Frostbolts as you would expect from a Frost Mage. Although our spec is supplemented with instant Mind Blasts, which is kind of different from the retail and overall mage playstyle, mainly because Frostbolt can make it instant and Mind Blast can proc us even more Fingers of Frost, which is an amazing synergy. We use standard Brain Freeze for some free fireballs, mostly because Fireball has a very nice coefficient, thus far dealing nice amounts of damage, and of course Ice Lances. We want to spam those Ice Lances as much as possible while we have Fingers of Frost up, and our Ice Lances are supplemented with two very powerful things. One is Shadow Lance, so basically we now shoot two lances, one is Frost, one is Shadow, and both deal similar damage, so you basically double down your twice just with one talent. And we also pick Icicles, so every time we cast Frostbolt, an Icicle is stored, and then when we actually cast Icelands, all Icicles are being unleashed, luring your enemies with Frost. And this is probably one of the biggest burst windows we can create, because on top of it all, we are also using the Frost Bomb, which make not only Frostbolt to deal additional damage while connecting with your target, but on top of that, it's an amazing burst preparation to cast Frost Bomb, then a couple of Frost Bolts, who not only deal quite a lot of damage in itself, but also store a couple of Icicles, and then when the Frost Bomb is finished, just unleash everything on your target, and all the remaining proc cooldowns we have up, which basically means that if done properly, and if we can have some time to free cast, which is the biggest drawback in this build basically, because it's very melee heavy and sometimes you have 3 or even 4 people on yourself. But that's also why I want to prioritize those instant cast spells. Usually in 1v1 situations, even melees don't stand a chance. Then it comes down basically who has more mobility or defensive cooldowns to live through the other's burst, and that's when it comes down to it. All in all, improved version of Frost Mage from Wrath of the Lich King times is pretty amazing, and even with the basic toolkit, without getting too many good rolls, you can still do pretty amazing in leveling BGs. I have so much joy playing it myself that I will probably prestigious a couple of more times, and when I get at least semi-good build during leveling, I will probably try it out on level 60. Because I have so much fun playing it, so that's why I recommend it also to you. And don't be discouraged by all those melees sitting on you 24/7. Just train your kiting skills, and I will tell you, as you've probably seen in the preview, that they will drop in a matter of seconds if you manage to outplay them. Enjoy. We're going to start off this build as an intellect, of course, as a primary start, as a cloth user, full spell power stuff. Frostbolt, pretty obvious. Fireball, because we will be getting those Brain Freeze procs. And 2 additional things in the beginning are Arcane Intellect for more damage, and a Fizzle just to have that extra interrupt. In PvP, this is pretty important, especially when fighting ranged casters, while for melee we have stuff like Frost Nova, Screams of the Past, Shimmer. Shimmer is great for casters because usually, you know, not so many people have stuns, so blink is not that important, while Shimmer can be cast while casting already. So very often I just start casting Frostbolt, somebody charges me, and during mid that charge I can just blink away while still finishing my spell. So this way I am kinda ensuring that I land my first spell, which is quite important. Other than that, we additionally get Mind Blast because we will be proccing instant Mind Blasts off our Frostbolt. Frost Bomb mandatory. This is our second most damaging ability. If we can free cast, very deadly, and on lower levels this deals quite a lot of damage. Ice Lance is the main thing of the build. Let's say we're going to be spamming this quite a lot, and it's very powerful while supplemented with certain things. As for talent, we go for Frosty Frost Frostbolt. Every third Frostbolt we just deal more damage, and additionally this has more chance to trigger Brain Freeze and Fingers of Frost, so very good thing. Ice Barrage, main thing of the build, so basically we create the icicles like on retail by casting Frostbolts, and then we unleash them with our Ice Lance. This deals quite a lot of damage, especially when we can cast many frost bolts during the frost bomb period and then unleash those while shooting out plenty of frost bolts. The ice lances supplemented with Fingers of Death, which basically means that casting ice lance also launches a shadow lance, dealing additional damage. These basically doubles the damage of ice lance, because it's slightly lower than ice lance the damage, but it's very near it. So if we can also buff up like some shadow damage on top of everything, it's going to be great. Fingers of Frost pretty obvious. We just want to generate those charges of instant ice lances. Cold Dark Thoughts. This is great because dealing direct damage with Frostbolt, Frostnova, Blizzard, Cone of Cold, Frozen Orb, everything basically that we will be using anyway, has some chance, like 50%, to give us instant Mind Blast, which deals 25 more damage. Very nice. Brain Freeze, same as Cold Dark Thoughts, but it generates free Fireball to shoot out. Also increases its damage by 25%, so very nice. Frost Pulse. This is the thing, mandatory thing that powers up our Frozen Orb, Frozen Bomb. So basically every time we Frostbolt somebody with Frost Bomb on them, it releases like AoE damage that deals pretty good amount and also removes, slows their movement speed. And this is actually a thing that we can swap out. This basically increases critical strike damage bonus of your spells by 20%, which is quite powerful, and our total frost damage by 7% for 8 seconds after casting Frostbolt. So it's very good, but there's also a thing called Mind Tendrils, which basically means that the Mind Blast that we generate through Frostbolts can have extra charge, and on top of that, consuming that Mind Blast grants us Fingers of Frost and resets the cooldowns of Mind Blast. So this means that it will allow us to generate more Fingers of Frost, which is quite important, especially when we are being trained. Then we can cast more on the move, which is quite important in PvP and fast-paced PvP, because yeah, most of the time we don't really have that much time to cast. So I think I'm gonna swap it out for this one this time. One big drawback is that we have to wait until level 40 to fully utilize the build, because yeah, Iceland becomes available at level 40, so we'll have to wait for it a little bit. But yeah, that's basically the build. All the things that we want to also get along the way are all kinds of Cone of Cold spells, so yeah, Glacial Spike and Cone of Cold mostly. All the Frost Novas like Icy Age or what's called Frost Nova, Water Nova is great as well, because all those spells can proc things like Fingers of Frost, as you can see, Brain Freeze, Cold Dark Thoughts, so it's very, very amazing. Also, the Frost Pulse is not only released by Frostbolt, but also by Cone of Cold, so in AoE situations or while fighting away, this can be great. So we will have to be on the lookout for those spells. Other than that, everything that buffs our frost damage is quite important, so that's how the build looks. I wanted to show you a build that is completely aids on Ascension. It's all about the Moonfire Spam. This build actually can be played in two ways. I actually like to use the more active playstyle, where you actually proc arcane missiles and use them for crazy burst damage. Although, if you don't really like procs, if you just want to have that brain dead Moonfire Spam, you have also like second option, where you don't take arcane missiles and all the buffs it has. You just fill it up with some passive damage that can proc on your Moonfire Spam, and then you just continue to spam those 3 buttons until your fingers falls away or whatever. It's so crazy good that it's just stupid, guys. I mean, come on. How can a build can be so powerful in PvP, where everything you cast is instant? You can smack all kinds of modifiers on top of it. It also applies dots. It's instant castable while moving because of that. While carding, you only need to put like 2 abilities. The rest can be also spent on CC or defensive cooldowns. This is like the easiest things to set up. I would kind of call it like a ranged Dark Intent build, and yeah, currently it's just out of hand really. The damage is crazy. You also, with certain talent, apply Moonfires to 2 targets at the same time, which in AoE is massive pressure. If you apply your 3 dots on a target that has less than 50% health, there's no way they can run away, they're just gonna die to dots, in case they're not healed, of course. I killed the healers with this build with ease, even though I don't even have an interrupt. Just like 2 Arcane Barrages with all 3 dots on the target, and they are like 100 to 0 most of the times. If you're gonna roll some additional CC and defensives on top of everything you pick during the carding part, you are like literally almost invincible. And if you're on a team that at least halfway knows what to do and they just don't go out and kill themselves, it's like a guaranteed win almost all the time. I'm very curious actually how this build works out on level 60, because on those low levels it's crazy overpowered. And I'm kinda also releasing this video in hopes that some people from dev team will actually see this and they will tune it down a little bit, because yeah, it's just crazy stupid how this simple to play thing can be so powerful. But yeah, enough bragging, you've probably seen enough on the clips I've shown you, so let's get into the setup. Alright guys, when it comes down to setup, we of course go for intellect as a primary main stat. Other than that, we don't really need haste, so just if you see crit, bump everything into that stat secondarily. For starters, I went with Moonfire, Arcane Missiles, because this is the method I like to play with. If you're just going for pure Moonfire Spam, you can still take it just to have that leveling skill. It's pretty powerful on low levels as well, so I would definitely recommend it. If not, you can just pick like Frostbolt, whatever, something to make those early levels worth it. Then at level 10, just switch it up to some interrupt, probably Fizzle, to increase your chances against other casters. Arcane Intellect to buff up some damage, and Tame Dragonkin. This is actually your personal preference. I actually picked him, the Frost Dragon, mainly because it has Deep Freeze. It can stun you for 4 seconds every 1 minute. Even though it has 3-second cast, when a melee charges you or something like that, you can just click it, and in 3 seconds, you're going to be standing there vulnerable for 4 seconds. So it's amazing, especially for the version with Arcane Missiles Spam. It just allows you more free casting. Also, they have Cone of Cold, which can slow enemies for 8 seconds a little bit, and some Arcane Barrage. The good thing is that they actually fight in melee, so the Cold Deep Freeze has only 20-yard range, but because they fight in melee, it's actually easier to land those. If you don't have Blue Dragonkin, which you can get from even the open world, then you get something like those Draconic Warhorns. They can definitely be got in Winter Spring in that Scalebane farming spots. Then you go for this blue one, the Draconic Warhorn, Draconic Mage Weaver. This is actually the pet. But in case you don't have something like that and you don't want to farm it, you can just go for a simple Tame Beast and Tame a Spider. They have amazing ability called Web, which immobilizes the target for 4 seconds. And the most important thing is that it's unbreakable, so you can just spam your Moonfires while running away. So it's an additional tool to get away from those pesky melees. So then as for skill cards, of course, we need to take other 2 Moonfires, which is Lunar Aspiration. This is the most damaging thing. And it uses energy, so it's great because it doesn't require that much mana regen. Sunfire, it has 10-second cooldown, but applies to all enemies in 8-yard range, so very nice spread damage. And an additional dot in single target, so just use it on cooldown. Then, of course, you have 4 open slots for CC and defensives. I took Blink and Shimmer for extra ability. Frost Nova and Screams of the Past, those are like 2 the best abilities. You can switch up one blink for some kind of stun or something, but actually having Frostbat and the stun allowed me to go for more mobility. You can take Divine Protection, because sometimes those melees will stick to you anyway. So while you're spamming Moonfire and running away, you can throw it up to reduce some incoming damage. But yeah, it's personal preference. I like to have a lot of mobility, that's why I took both blinks. Remember please that blinks have like internal 8-second cooldown, so if you use one, you have to wait 8 seconds before you can use another. So maybe a sprint can be a better choice, especially that do everything on the move. But I like to play with the arcane missiles and more active playstyle, so I'll actually like to have more ability to reposition myself rather than just run away for longer periods of time. Alright, but let's go down for the setup. I want to make one thing very clear in the beginning. I picked the ranged druid because on paper this looks amazing. Unfortunately, I don't know what is happening. Is this a bug or something? But it didn't actually proc that many times. It did. I've seen it on the detailed spreadsheet. It randomly shoot out some wrath and stuff like that. If it would work normally, during Moonfire Spam, this would be shit ton of additional random damage. Maybe that's why it's tuned down to some very low proc chance or something like that. But during those playthroughs, I haven't seen that many spells being thrown. I also did roll some additional druidic things because I thought that maybe I need to have an ability like Wrath or Star Surge so that it can be able to be procced. But no, this is absolutely not the case. I don't know, there's something wrong with the spell part of this ability, so for the moment I won't recommend it. You can instead pick some random stuff like Thunderstrike or I don't know, Sitting Flames or Fire Burst. They're all pretty good. But first and foremost, we take Elun's Fury, which basically allow our Moonfire to hit 2 targets. This is also a bug, I think, because it says that your Moonfire ability damage over time effect, so only the dot now hit an additional target, but costs 30% more. So it should not do the direct damage on the second target, but currently it does. So yeah, your Moonfire everybody around, like not everybody, but 2 targets around, and also the direct damage is applied, so it's just simple, more damage. Improved Moonfire, please have explanatory, just more damage on this one. There's also the capstone is pretty good because every time you crit, you get additional damage on the target, so very nice addition. Another mandatory thing is Moon Fury because it increases the damage of Moonfire by another 10%. And then we go into more personal preference because then you only need like those 3 things. Those are like mandatory. The rest can be put into some random procs, like I said. Amorphosat Malediction, Seething Flames, Fire Burst, that Thunderstrike, can't exactly remember the name. They are all good. Whatever you have that procs additional attacks, just take it. It will increase your damage tremendously. But if you opt for some more active playstyle like me with the Arcane Missiles, then you go for Shot Weaving, because yeah, that extra physical damage is great, but you will also need to use bow instead of a wand because it doesn't work other than that. You want to take arcane motes, and this is why I also love the Arcane Missiles version of this build, because every time our Arcane Missiles hit, we generate an Arcane Mote, and 1 Arcane Mote increases our Moonfire damage by 5%. So it means that our Arcane Missiles hit 5 times, which means that it stacks up to full after 1 full channel. This means that we got 25% damage increase on all our Moonfires, which is great, just by casting one very quick spell. So I love it. During combat, I literally have it constantly up. Missile Barrage, please, self-explanatory, just by spamming Moonfires, you get the proc to shoot a faster Arcane Barrage. Arcane Empowerment is great because Arcane Missiles deal 30% damage more of your spell power, so it's great, and also it increases the damage of all the party and raid members by 3%, so flat damage. And this is basically our setup. Like I said, for Arcane, just swap out the ranged druid for some random stuff. I would actually recommend going for Amalthazad Malediction, because it also slows enemies, so it can help up fighting melees. But if you just want the pure Moonfire Spam, then Elun's Fury is mandatory, Improved Moonfire, and Immune Fury. Then you have 5 free slots just to slap some random additional modifiers. There are also Mystic Engines, but yeah, you cannot really buff Arcane Missiles too much, so it all comes down to Moonfire. So we take, of course, Improved Moonfire, increased damage and crit chance of Moonfire by 4%, so it's going really crazy. We take another Immune Fury for increased 6% of damage, Powerful Moonfire for another 6% damage with the fire, Wizard's Moonfire just have that extra spell power, and Lunar Guidance is great because it increases our spell power by 3% of our intellect, and we're going to be having quite a lot of intellect because of our spell power gear. And also I take Intelligent Design, increases damage of your nature abilities and increases damage of arcane abilities by 1%, and Earth and Moon does exactly the same. And this is it, guys. Along the way I managed to get some very cool stuff, like for example this one, Astral Mind, dealing direct damage with arcane spells, grants you Overloaded, turning into Astral Power when reaching 10 stacks, and Astral Power increases all magic damage dealt by 5%, but on top of that, I also got Astral Fury when you gain Astral Power. Then we also trigger Astral Tempest, which deals very nice additional damage in AoE rages, so it's very cool and fun addition. It also looks pretty cool, like an arcane storm above your enemies. Other than that, yeah, things like Slow, for example, is amazing for kiting. I received like concussion blows, so if a melee charges me, I can instantly stun them. Got Controlled Blast, which can also daze enemies for 6 seconds, so very nice additional stuff. Also from defensives, I got Lay on Hands, Evasion, Divine Infusion, which is actually pain suppression version. So pretty cool stuff, and on top of everything I also got Arcane Power. So this increases my damage quite tremendously. Other than that, you also want to pick up as much crit as possible. Things like Raise, and there's like many mage and caster modifiers that increase your damage that can always be helpful. And on level 60 I was already having 35% crit chance. With all those Moonfire modifiers, it probably has something around 50% chance to crit, which is pretty crazy. Twisted Mind is also very good because it increases your spell power by 60. So overall you want as much spell power as possible and just supplement it with a crit and you're good to go. No haste needed at all. So guys, thank you for watching. I hope you're gonna have some fun on this AIDS build. I really was wondering to share it with all of you, but I thought to myself that maybe if I show it, then somebody will actually get some attention. It will actually do that. The build will get some attention. It's going to be nerfed because, yeah, it's crazy stupid to be running around with Moonfires and just spamming them and killing everything on sight. So, I present you an updated guide for the Fire PvP caster that I made some time ago. Even after some nerfs, the build is still alive and kicking due to how well it works with powered up Holy Fire. It's very nice, consistent damage thanks to castable while moving Scorch and instant fire blasts that give us big upper hand as a caster archetype. We supplement the build with big holy fires that hit up to 5 targets, giving us nice AoE on top of amazing burst on focused targets that can delete people from the BG maps. Try to always line up together buffed Holy Fire and Fire Blast, as it's an insane amount of burst in short periods of time. As mentioned before, the playstyle revolves around building a stack to unleash a powerful attack, so at times it can feel a little bit slow, but once you release that Holy Fire, the true magic is happening. On top of that, it only requires to cut 2 spells, so we have 4 slots for CC, mobility and defensive toolkit. It's a perfect pick for people that like their enemies served extra crispy. Right boys, so when it comes down to the build, we of course want to go for the intellect and as much spell power as possible. Crit chance is always welcome, but haste as well, as we will be using Holy Fire and Scorch Earth, which are both castable, so each of the stats through the talents is pretty much welcome. When it comes down to the starter skills, we want to start it off with Arcane Intellect and Fire Blast, which both are mandatory. I like to take Fizzle and Fireball for some more initial damage while leveling, and usually when you have some time to free cast, Fireball is usually more powerful than the Scorched Earth, but yeah, you're not going to use it that much. If you really want, you can go for some kind of pet with freeze, web, like a spider or anything like that. It's always gonna give you more CC if you want to min-max. When it comes down to the skill cards, we use two mandatory ones, which is Scorched Earth. This is a standard Scorch, but with a modifier that is able to be cast while moving, and Holy Fire, which is basically our very powerful spender, let's say. The rest is basically repick, whatever you want. I always take Frost Nova for a freeze, Screams of the Past as it's very nice CC, and Fear is just simply annoying because even if you're fighting against humans, every man for himself cannot actually work against it. So very nice. Divine Protection, if I get trained by like 2 melees or some ranged very powerful enemy, it can reduce the damage by quite a lot for 8 seconds, and of course Shimmer for more mobility. I always take Shimmer because it has 5 seconds shorter cooldown, and on top of that it also is available to use while casting, so you can reposition yourself without breaking the Scorch cast time, which is amazing. Scorch or Holy Fire, doesn't matter. When it comes down to talents, we take Flame On, which is basically one of the most mandatory things in here, because this basically allows you to buff up the Fire Blast damage next to casting Firebolt, Scorch or Flame Strike. Basically you use it 3 times, and against players you have 45% more damage against them. Fire Blast is on cooldown, so basically every now and again you have it buffed up. Incineration increases the critical strike chance of your Fire Blast and Scorch, so 2 of your main abilities. 9% is quite a bit. Spell Impact increases the damage of the before mentioned spells, also by an additional 9%, amazing to have. Ignite, which basically gives us a dot every time we crit. Burnout for more fire damage and increased crit damage. Impact is pretty much amazing because it not only increases damage of Fire Blast by 9%, and also Meteor, which you can, of course, if you want, you can take Meteor in here. It's available from level 36 and deals pretty nice damage, but you always have to keep your enemy like frozen or something to be able to reliably use it. I just prefer the spam Scorch, but it definitely gives you more AoE. But back on the topic, Impact allows you, that's your direct damage dealing spells, have a small chance to make next Meteor, or Meteor has a 100% chance to cause your next Fire Blast to stun the target for 3 seconds. This is pretty RNG, but when it stuns the target you have like 3 damage, so why not have it? And then we go, this is like the toolkit that buffs Scorch Earth and Fire Blast, and then we go for Kindles for Holy Fire, which basically means that fire spells grant you this buff, which increases the damage of next Holy Fire by 15%. It stacks up to 5 times and lasts for 15 seconds. This lines up amazingly with Righteous Radiance, which basically, when stacked to 5, we gain it by casting fire spells, which is Fire Blast and Scorch. And then when we stack it to 5, it not only deals additional radiant damage to the main target, but also to the additional 5 nearby, and also applies a dot, which doesn't really deal that much damage, but a direct hit does. And about as long as we use Kindles for Holy Fire, this basically allows us to have that great burst window. Of course, while casting Holy Fire, we have to stand still, but it doesn't matter, we just have to do it every once and again. And like I said, we've got Shimmer just in case we need to reposition while casting and stuff like that, so it's great for that. Also Holy Fire, it's only 1.5 second cast, so with some additional haste it can be brought down to 1.2 or 1.3, which is pretty damn fast if you ask me. So like the only change you can do is take Meteor for like improved stuns, and it deals pretty hefty amount of damage if you ask me. But I don't really like to use it that much, so I just prefer to grab another CC. And along the way, as always, you just want to grab as many defensives, CCs and heals as possible. In this playthrough, I didn't actually manage to get any healing. That could be useful, I just have Prayer of Healing, which is pretty garbo. But yeah, I got Last Stand, I got Deterrence, I also got Unleashed Fell Energy, which is pretty nice. because it adds up additional damage on top of your spells. Unfortunately, we are not actually a stationary caster. Well, this is not unfortunately, but unfortunately for this spell. We're not a stationary caster, so it's pretty useless. But yeah, very nice to have. When it comes down to talents, we just want simple things like firepower increases all fire damage, alacrity increases spell power, thundering strikes every crit, talent modifier is great. Everything for holy fire is pretty much amazing. Like searing light increases damage of your holy fire by 12% in this case, but a maximum stacks 15%. So yeah, everything that can buff up your spell power, haste or crit is always welcome. Also range of the spells. So like I said, it's pretty straightforward to build up. Nothing really fancy in here. You just basically spam your Scorched Earth and Fire Blast. And when you get that very nice pop out on the screen, you just cast Holy Fire. If you are interested in weak auras, I'm using this one from Flame On. And you just trigger, you just put the name Flame On, and you put here stack count for 3. Then when it's full, it's going to show up. I also use this texture from Blizzard, and when it comes down to, oh my god, cancel. When it comes down to the Holy Fire, I'm using this texture, and then I go for the spell ID, which is Kindle Righteous Radiance. 270300308 is the spell ID. And then you just take stack count 5, and then you can the weak aura will show when it's ready to pop off.